Greetings, this is Curtis. Hope all is well with you all. Just want to do a quick video discussing the MLK assassination. Rest in power to Dr. Martin Luther King on this date. As you may know, he was assassinated in Memphis, and it was a coordinated attack on him. It was organized all the way up to Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was mad at Dr. King for opposing his genocidal war in Vietnam. But it was a coordinated attack committed by LBJ, the CIA, the FBI, H.L. Hunt, who was a Texas oil billionaire and is one of the inventors of the voting machines. The voting machine company can't think the name of it now. It's not Dominion, it's ENS, Election System Software, but they're like one of the major voting machine vendors. So interesting tidbit that the person who organized the assassination of the person who delivered the Voting Rights Act is now controlling the electronic voting machines, which are used to rig elections primarily for Republicans. But it's also organized by the Memphis Mafia and the Memphis Police. It was the Memphis Police sharpshooter who worked for the Memphis Police Department who actually assassinated Dr. King. But they were Army troops stationed out of Fort McPherson, which is now the Todd Perry Studios, where he makes all his little silly ass, anti-black propaganda films. It was the troops out of Fort McPherson, Georgia, who were in the background ready to take out Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Andy Young should the Memphis mob connected sharpshooter for the Memphis police, should they have failed to carry out the hit. This was not something that was done by James L. Ray. He was just a patsy, just like Lee Harvey Oswald was a patsy for the JFK assassination. He was a patsy. But it was a coordinated attack to destroy not only the anti-war movement, but the Black freedom struggle, and also to attack King's more radical politics, which were shifting towards more socialism, reparations, the redistribution of wealth, and also critiquing capitalism and also, as I mentioned, imperialism. As MLK said, America is the biggest purveyor of violence around the world. And he said this in 1967 at his speech critiquing the Vietnam War, and that fact still stands today, even in the midst of all this Russophobia. But another interesting fact, and I'm going to reference some really good books that you all can check out. William Pepper, he wrote the book Orders to Kill. He wrote the book Active State, which talks about the MLK assassination. And he wrote another book, The Plot to Kill MLK, which came out, I believe, in 2015. Really three high quality books. And he was an attorney. And a lot of people don't know, but a civil trial in 1992 found that the U.S. government essentially executed the assassination of MLK, and they were found guilty of doing this. This is a civil trial. A lot of people don't know about this, but this occurred in 1992. But William Pepper, in his books, something I found always kind of stayed with me in reading those books. So Dr. King was involved in basically helping to organize sanitation workers in Memphis, to obtain better wages, and just better working conditions. Being a sanitation worker to this day is still one of the most dangerous occupations in America. Hundreds of people die every single year from just collecting trash because it's very dangerous. You have shredded glass. People are driving around in their cars and, the sanitation workers get hit. So he was helping to organize as a part of his shift towards, organizing with working class movements all across the country, particularly, working class black movements, because in Memphis, most of the sanitation workers were black. So this was part of his new initiative with the Poor People's Campaign. But when he was involved in this movement, he was actually supposed to be staying at a downtown hotel. Which would have been safer, would have been enclosed. If you think about a lot of downtown hotels, like, we're here in downtown Atlanta. Most of the hotels, they're not like wide open, just kind of shoddy motels could make you a sitting duck for an assassin. They're enclosed buildings. So it makes it a lot more difficult to carry out a hit, if you're trying to murder somebody via like a gunshot, it's very difficult to do that in an enclosed hotel. But he was due to stay at a downtown hotel in Memphis. And the FBI, because they were, in control and still in control of the media to this day, they put out an article smearing Dr. King for not buying black, for, him being Dr. King, him, being about the Poor People's Campaign and being pro-black, but he's going to be staying at a white-owned hotel in downtown Memphis. They put out this article, in the newspapers, attacking him. And I believe, if I remember correctly, it was it was just like a random piece written by a so-called journalist, attacking him for this. They put out all types of attack articles against Dr. King at this time. Remember, FBI actually encouraged Dr. King to commit suicide right as he was about to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. So, so they put out an article attacking him for not buying black. And, I believe, at the time, and where do we go from here? Dr. King was actually, he was, in many respects, and it's kind of misused to this day, but he talked about the importance of black people supporting black businesses. But he did not see that as a source of black liberation or as the equivalent to of wealth redistribution. It was just, a strategy, of economic boycotts, etc. But the FBI attacked him for wanting to stay at this hotel. And so Dr. King stayed at the Lorraine Motel, which was actually owned by a black person. But the interesting thing was that the Lorraine Motel was not safe. It was a very, literally, if you are going to stay at the Lorraine Motel and being as prominent as Dr. King was, and to be experiencing so many death threats as he was at the time, you are literally a sitting duck if you're going to be staying at the Lorraine Motel. And Dr. King was, and this hotel, it was black owned, but it was also a major source of drug dealing and prostitution. And this was a protected business of the Memphis police, because police, as always, have acted as a form of protectionist rackets for illegal crime syndicates. So that's why, you have police that would always protect the mafia in their drug dealing. They will protect, different sex traffickers in their sex trafficking. And this particular hotel owner had the police in her back pocket because they were running prostitution and selling drugs. So they had very close ties to the police. So it was just, it's always just been interesting of how, the whole notion of buying black was weaponized by the FBI to assassinate Dr. King. And this hotel was owned by a black capitalist who was paying off the police to protect his illegal prostitution ring and drug dealing ring. Because, of course, most hotels, to this day are still, places where people go, where a lot of sex trafficking is going on and a lot of drug dealing is going on. But he had close ties to the Memphis police. And as I mentioned, it was a Memphis police sharpshooter who actually pulled the trigger, pulled the trigger in working with the Memphis Mafia to assassinate Dr. King. So, just an important lesson, to realize that, black capitalism is not black liberation. It's really an extension of white supremacy. That's why, Richard Nixon, promoted black capitalism to destroy the more black radical movements. And buying black is great. I'm all in favor of it, but it's not something that's going to lead to any type of black progress or black liberation. Simple fact that, black people spend billions of dollars in black churches, every single weekend, and that hasn't resulted in any meaningful material progress in the black community is an example of that. But it was just, that just reading that book, and that fact that I just mentioned was actually in the book, Active State by William Pepper, because he actually wrote 3 books on the topic. And in the second book, he references that fact of how, FBI put out a propaganda piece attacking Dr. King for staying at a white-owned hotel, basically, because it was a setup to get him to stay at the Lorraine Motel, because that was the only black-owned hotel in Memphis at the time. And the FBI knew that, hey, that's one of our, our friendly spots where we can easily carry out a hit on him. Not only is it controlled by one of our quote unquote boys, who's literally funding the police and has the police in their back pocket, It's a place where it's like it's easy to carry out assassination, because like literally it's just a wide open balcony. And even on top of that, Dr. King originally was staying at a ground level hotel room, which would have made it more difficult to carry out like a sniper attack. But his hotel was actually moved by an inside FBI informant in SCLC up to a higher level room where, I think a third or second level room, second floor balcony, if you will, where it made it easier for him to be sniped. So, when you read this book, you just see of the levels of coordination and planning and organization that the U.S. government, in cooperation with all their armed agents and some of their, armed vigilantes, being the Memphis mob, did to take out this great leader who was becoming more radical and was starting to critique U.S. foreign policy. And that's why he was assassinated, along with the fact that he was literally going to shut down D.C., in order to demand, he's going to create a multiracial working class movement to demand a massive redistribution of wealth back in 1968. So this is a man ahead of his time, and that's why, he was unfortunately assassinated. But his spirit lives on, and I just wanted to drop this fact. On his assassination date. Rest in power to him, and please continue to join movements that are advancing the anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, and also anti-racist, because it has to be all three aspects of his life and legacy. All right, that's it for now. Peace.